She's already much better at manipulating mana, even though he hasn't really taught her anything specific. The only advice he keeps giving is faster, faster, faster. That's all he can tell her. Veronica knows she still hasn't done enough. She needs to improve as quickly as possible, because soon her grandfather will die and maybe Ray won't stay by her side forever. She keeps pushing herself to speed up, saying she wants to live up to everyone's expectations. Then suddenly, both of them are surprised when Ray notices her mana circle, which had been empty before, start to fill. Unlike him though, she succeeds, but is left completely exhausted, with a pounding headache and her body trembling. Still, she's crying with gratitude, saying she only managed it because he was there. Ray, however, is confused. All he told her was to go faster, and that was it. My god, top 10 saddest moments in the anime. She's thrilled, and Ray tells her to show it to her grandfather. I got this sinking feeling he's never going to wake up again, and I don't know why. She goes up the stairs and tells Ray to come with her. She wants to show her grandfather that everything she achieved was thanks to him. It'll be beautiful for them to show him together. Look at all this joy, all this sparkle. She knocks on the door, calls out that she's coming in all radiant, when suddenly she freezes. The protagonist asks what's wrong. And there it is, the window was open, and her grandfather was collapsed on the floor. Of course, this had to happen right when the girl was at her happiest. Sometime later, the old man wakes up, and the protagonist tells him he took his time this time, 2.5 days in total. The old man smiles and says he really doesn't have much time left. Seeing that there wasn't even a chair nearby, he figures Veronica didn't have the strength to watch him in his final moments. She always had a gentle soul and a light heart. Then he tells Ray he wants to express his gratitude. He forced the boy to learn magic so suddenly, and he knows it all came out of nowhere. Ray says that doesn't make sense, their interests aligned, and that's exactly why he came here. The old man just thinks to himself as always, what a strange child. He then says this will probably be the last lesson. No, Grandpa, don't say that. He asks Ray if he has any questions. Ray apparently decides to confess that he can't feel emotions. The liar shouting, crying, flailing, just putting on a show. The old man says he had suspected as much. Ray explains that in daily life there are very few things he actually feels. He doesn't know if maybe it's some kind of illness. The grandfather replies that a condition involving the heart can also be called an illness. Sometimes people shut themselves off after going through traumatic experiences. But since Ray seems calm about it, his case is probably different from most. Ray tries to think back on traumatic moments to some time when he could feel emotions, but he doesn't remember. He thinks he's always been like this. Then Ray asks what kind of magic his grandfather was using. It always felt like he understood Ray's intentions without him meaning to say anything, almost as if he had the power to read minds. The old man laughs, seeing Ray think that's magic. He explains that all he was doing was reading facial expressions. He tells him that whenever Ray understood some kind of magic circle or sequence, he would give a small smile at the corner of his lips. When he was confused about certain emotions, his eyes would sharpen a little. Right now, for example, he can tell by the way Ray is looking at him that he doesn't really understand what's being said. All of those are subtle signs, but they still show what he's feeling. He suggests Ray could try learning to read people's expressions too. Maybe that could become its own kind of magic he might eventually master. But Ray says he thinks it'll be very hard. Everyone's face just looks the same to him. After that, he goes down the stairs and sees Veronica sitting on a table. He calls out to her and tells her there isn't much time. Straight to the point, wasn't he? Veronica is afraid to see because she knows that once she does, it'll be real. This will be the last time. But Ray tells her this is her final chance to speak to her grandfather, and she won't ever get another. So she rushes past him, opens the door, and sees the two children crying. The old man calls out for her and celebrates that she finally came. Proud, she tells him she finally managed to build her magic circle. She holds his hands and says he once held her hand the same way and told her not to worry. He had said she wouldn't have to suffer from the cold anymore or go hungry. She had been so happy when he told her to move in with him. And now he didn't have to worry anymore because he had taught them all enough. The grandfather says he has no regrets. He knew how strong the children here were and was happy to have met them all. We cut to the funeral. Veronica even spent all the money she had to build a beautiful grave for the old man. With that, the children go to bed and she closes the door. She thanks Ray, saying it would have been hard to carry him alone. The protagonist notices he still hasn't shed a tear, but her mana vessel looked like it was about to burst. He couldn't quite understand what expression that was supposed to be. He remembers his grandfather telling him to learn how to read people's expressions. He notices Veronica's mouth tightening and beneath her hair sees her crying. When Ray finally understands what she's feeling strangely, he also starts crying and gets confused. He hadn't intended to feel any sadness. At that moment, Veronica collapses on the floor, sobbing, but our boy hugs her, remembering that Niles once did the same for him, and it made him feel better. Even if he didn't fully understand the emotion, he had a sincere desire to comfort her. The next chapter begins with Philip placing a hand on Kendrick's shoulder, who's crying, telling him he hopes he returns soon. The two of them get into the carriage. The protagonist glances in the mirror and comments that it seems they're not leaving today. He invited them, but wasn't sure if they'd really want to come. We then see a little earlier Veronica surprised, wanting to know what this business about leaving together was. And he had said yes, he wanted her to come with him and Philip, considering she knew all the theory even human circles. She'd be a huge help. On top of that, she carried that strange white sun, a kind of human he'd never seen in anyone else. Veronica replies that it's all too sudden. Besides, she has those 2 kids to take care of. He tells her not to worry, that Philip's hotel can look after them. She says she'd still be worried about the library. He tells her to just keep it closed for now, and Kendrick and the others from the group would watch over it so no one invades. He assures her nothing will happen, but if she doesn't want to come, then that's fine. She answers that obviously, but asks for some time to think. Back in the carriage, Philip says it's already 10 in the morning, and our boy shifts gears, saying it's time to head out. While Kendrick cries like a fool, suddenly Veronica appears, shouting for them to wait for her. She wants to come along. Philip says she must have been hiding behind a rock as she keeps yelling. He asks the protagonist if he's going to stop, and Ray, acting like he's in Fast and Furious, swings the door open and tells her to get in. She's teary-eyed, grabs his hand, and he pulls her inside. Philip, confused, asks why she waited until they were already speeding off to suddenly show up. She answers that she was scared. If she had gotten in earlier, she might have hesitated and wanted to back out. But now there was no turning back since they'd already left. Sometime later, though, both of them are throwing up, and the protagonist realizes the carriage has some problems. Apparently, they traveled 7 hours straight without a break, and the terrain was brutal. Since it was already night, they decide to stop. That's when Ray reveals his goal is to find the prism or the rainbow. Veronica knows what that is, but Philip is confused. The protagonist explains everything to Philip, also telling both of them about Mark Red. Philip says fine. Then from now on, he'll help investigate those people too. Ray makes it clear, though, that the path he's taking will put all their lives at risk. Yeah, maybe he should have said that before they left the safe city. Still, he promises he'll protect both of them as much as possible in any situation. And of course, he'll help them reach their own goals too. But if they're afraid, they can always turn back. Ray says this, but he already sees both their hearts glowing yellow, the color of courage. Not only that, but it was the largest amount he ever seen. That's when Philip reveals his goal, to find his mother. It seems she abandoned him when he was little, intending to move to another sector to earn money. Her plan had been to leave, make money, then return and take him with her. But since then, she never came back. Philip is certain something happened to her, and that's why he was saving money, to go there and somehow find her. Veronica, moved to tears, says his story is so sad. So then Veronica reveals that her goal is to complete her grandfather's research. He'd been studying the black rain, why it caused skin discoloration, ruined soil, and brought all those diseases. It seems those diseases are incurable with current technology, and one of them is even eternal sleep. Philip says he'll do his best, and she agrees. The 3 of them promise to help one another in their separate goals. Philip reaches out his hand to Ray, saying from now on they can all count on each other. But Ray is too cold and calculating, seeing it as a meaningless gesture. Touching fists doesn't make the body or magic any stronger. Still, they keep their hands over the fire, insisting he join in. Come on, stop being difficult. Even though he thinks it's silly, he does it, and the 2 of them smile. But their smiles quickly fade when they realize this must be what Ray meant about risking their lives. They were being chased. No, worse, they were heading straight toward a herd of stone elk. Next chapter, they've already been traveling for 7 days. The protagonist corrects them, actually 9, and they've lost count. He tells them not to worry. It took 10 days to go from sector 50 to 49, so they should be close. That's when Philip looks to the side and sees a strange curtain of smoke, and as it nears, it becomes clear it's a stampede of stone elk charging straight at their carriage. Veronica says she's read about these creatures. They're pretty self-explanatory. A stone elk. Thanks for the clarification. What she finds strange is that, in theory, they're supposed to be gentle creatures, and it's not migration season. Ray is certain something must be happening behind them, since the elk are charging in this direction. He knows a head-on clash is impossible, so he tells Veronica to prepare a defense, and she proves useful, raising a barrier around the carriage. Ray then floors it, Fast and Furious style, plowing straight through the herd. The elk stomp onto the carriage, hammering their hooves against the barrier, while Veronica struggles to hold it up. But Ray sees it clearly won't last, so he calls out to Philip. It's time for him to learn how to drive the perfect chance. Ray jumps out, leaving poor Philip to dive for the reins, realizing the boy is insane. By then, Ray is already standing on top, staring into the horizon. Among the herd, he spots one with a blue color, and off in another direction, the ground is littered with dead elk soaked in blood. He orders Philip to head that way. But just then, the barrier begins to crack. Veronica's nose is bleeding, her mana almost drained. Ray realizes it was a mistake to force her to maintain the shield, since all she has is white mana. And now that the barrier shatters, there's only one thing left he can do. Philip yells at him to be careful as a beast charges in to crush him, when suddenly something explodes over the carriage. Veronica leans out the window to check, and Ray is still standing there, untouched. He had used metallization to turn both himself and the carriage into an unstoppable ball of steel. With that, Philip says the problem is solved. They just have to keep going straight. Sometime later, they stop again. Everyone is exhausted, drained, but the protagonist steps out and walks to where several elk corpses lie. Philip asks if they caused it, and Veronica says obviously not. These creatures have extremely tough hides. No carriage collision could pierce them like that. Ray agrees.